Part 330. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3299. Zhou Man turned his head and said to Mingda, "Hurry up, or he will fly away in a while." "Bai Erlang, why should I fly away?" Mingda chuckled and said, "Because the cowhide is too big." Bai Erlang shook his head and said, "You are just jealous. Come on, De Bauer, eldest sister, for you guys, was I very popular just now?" The two children nodded together. Mingda and Zhou Man watched him make trouble with his two children. During the 10 days of field leave, Zhou Man and his two children were the happiest. She had more free time. Not only did she have enough rest, but she also took Bai Jingxing and Bai Ruyu to stroll around the streets of the capital, which was a huge gain. When the holiday was over, Zhou Man was still a little out of his mind, sitting in the hall in a daze. Zhao Qiuagong came out and said, "Your Majesty, Qingzhou has a military report. Baikya invaded the area of Baixia City." The Baixian magistrate of Bihai County assisted Qingzhou Inspector Lu to send troops to defeat the enemy. He captured more than 800 enemy leaders and defeated the Baikya rebel army. Zhou Man woke up, first turned his head and glanced at Yang Hesha next to him, and after seeing him nod, he sat up straight, and pricked up his ears to listen carefully. The emperor asked, "How about the casualties of our army?" Lu Inspector was well prepared, so the casualties were not heavy. 168 people were killed and more than 300 wounded. The emperor was relieved, and then said with a cold face, "Baikya dared to violate my border," and asked the envoy to question Baikya. "Yes," Zhao Qiuagong said after a pause, "who does your Majesty think is suitable?" Li Shangshu immediately proposed, "Your Majesty, this minister thinks that it is very suitable for Lord Wang, the Doctor of Chaos." Zhou Man blinked, come, Li Shangshu," he came with the mask of revenge. Li Shangshu had long disliked Lord Wang, so he brought back the eminent monks in Tianzhu and recommended them to the emperor. In Li Shangshu's opinion, he was similar to Ning Chen. Although Na Luoer was expelled and left, Lord Wang had nothing to do. As soon as Li Shangshu finished speaking, Lord Wang, who was sitting behind all the ministers, got up and stepped out, knelt down and said, "Your Majesty, the minister is willing to go." The emperor nodded and said, "Okay. Then I will make Wang Qing the official ambassador of the mission, and I will be sent to Baikya to maintain the relationship between the two countries. Lord Wang should go down." At the end of the great court meeting, Yang Heshu helped Zhou Man up and said with a smile, "Let's go to the imperial study together." "Zhou Man, your Majesty didn't call me." Yang Heshu thought for a while and said, "Then wait for me at the imperial hospital, and wait for me to come out and tell you the news." Zhou Man nodded again and again, "Thank you, brother." Yang Heshu and several other ministers went to see the emperor, and they had to discuss whether Qingzhou would continue to use troops. This depends on the specific content of the Qingzhou excerpt. Xiao Yuanzheng and Zhou Man were returning to the imperial hospital together. Seeing her distraught appearance, he said, "Don't worry, since Zhao Qiuagong didn't say anything at the court meeting, then Master Bai should be safe." "Zhou Man, I'm not worried about this, I just think it's a little strange." "What's weird?" Zhou Man thought about it and shook his head, "It's nothing. Last year, Inspector Lu just sent troops to suppress the bandits and killed the bandits at sea. All the bandits suffered heavy casualties. The morale of the Dajin at sea was high, and Baikya was not stupid. How could he attack Dajin at this time?" She always felt a little weird. Yang Hesha didn't come over until lunchtime, and Zhou Manbian and the palace servant asked for an extra meal, and the two of them talked while eating. Yang Hesha said, "Your Majesty asked Qingzhou to continue to use troops to drive all the intruding Baikya people out of Liaodong, but they were not allowed to pursue them, and peace was the main priority." Zhou Man asked, "Is there any reason why Baikya committed the crime on the book?" Yang Hesha said, "Speaking of which, it has something to do with Bai Shan. He taught the method of drying salt to Liaodong County, and Liaodong dried salt in the area of Baisha. It is unfortunate to say that the mole from the north invaded the border a few years ago, but the army of Liaodong went north. The enemy, most of the troops who stayed behind were deployed in Pyongyang to guard against Silla and Baikya, who knew that Baikya would bypass Pyongyang and attack Baisha city from the sea. The purpose is the salt in the salt field. Yang Heshuk paused for a while and looked at Zhou Man and said, the book said that it was the merchant ship going out to sea that accidentally saw the battleship of Baikya, so he hurried back to Bihai County to report the letter. Bai Shan asked Lu Inspector to send troops, and instead outflanked from behind, and the defenders of Baisha city attacked together from back and forth, and only then did the Baikya rebel army be defeated. Zhou Man, it sounds pretty smooth. Yang Hesha nodded, yes, it went very well. The two looked at each other and said nothing. Yang Hesha finished his meal, drank a sip of tea and rinsed his mouth, and then said, this time both Lu and Bai Shan have made great contributions. When this battle is over, Lu will also serve as the governor of the Jiunan Prefecture Governor's Office, and will only be in charge of the military and government. Zhou Man was stunned. Jiunan Prefecture and Qing Prefecture are separated by a sea. Is Lu Shishi busy? Yang Hesha said nonchalantly, it's hard work for those who are capable. His Majesty thinks that Lu Shishi's ability is still in leading troops to fight, and he instructed him to hand over the affairs of Qingzhou to his subordinates. What about Bai Shan? Yang Heshu looked at her and smiled and said, Your Majesty asked him to return to Beijing to report his duties after the war. Seeing her happy, Yang Hesha couldn't help laughing, and said, he has done a lot in Bihai County over the past few years. He just killed the pirates last year, and this year he assisted Inspector Lu in winning the battle, and let him stay in Bihai County again. It would be too subservient to go down, and for so many credits, if you don't recall it at this time, if you call it later, the position will not be given well. Zhou Man grinned, clenched his fists and asked, then won't he be able to return to Beijing soon? Yang Heshu, look at their actions. His eyes swept across her stomach, and he lowered his eyes and said, I hope he can make it back. At this time, Bai Shan was standing by the sea, looking out, when Inspector Lu came over in uniform, followed his gaze and saw a vast sea, and asked, what's the difference between the sea in Baisha city and the sea in Bihai County? Bai Shan shook his head and said, the rough look is different, but the finer look is the same wind, the same boundless. Shouldn't you say it the other way around? Bai Shan smiled and said, Sir, what the subordinate is talking about is feelings, not scenery. Inspector Lu also looked up and nodded after a while, that's right. He said, there is a boat going back in the afternoon, won't you, the magistrate of Bihai County, go back with them? Bai Shandao, the Baikya rebels that have fled are still operating in the coastal area, and the lower officials think that they should all be expelled. The imperial court will definitely hold Baikya accountable when they receive the battle report. Our actions here can also deter them. I have great Jingguo. Inspector Lu looked left and right, and when he saw that his followers were standing far away, he clicked his tongue, I will send someone to clean up those chaotic troops. You have already made meritorious deeds, and with your current merits, you will be able to transfer them back in a few days. Beijing, the goal has been achieved, why are you still suffering on the front line? Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3300. Bai Shan shook his head, no, your Majesty is worried that the chaotic army will offend the coastal people, and he will definitely order us to pursue the chaotic army in Baikya until all the chaotic troops are driven out, so I can't go back to Beijing for a day if they don't leave. He said, my wife is due to give birth in 2 months. I can't wait for His Majesty's holy order to arrive, and Lord Inspector has the heart to make the coastal people suffer for more than 10 days. Inspector Lu, didn't I already send someone to pursue it? You won't be of much use in staying here, you might as well go back to Bihai County to handle government affairs. Bai Shan shook his head. I can provide logistics for the adults, and ensure that the soldiers are high-spirited and enthusiastic. As for Bihai County, there is Fang County Chief here, so don't worry too much. He paused and said, don't you want to take the opportunity to see Fang Xianquan's ability? Inspector Lu looked at Bai Shan for a long time, and finally asked with his hands behind his back, are you sure? Are you really going back to the capital? Bai Shan has made too much credit in Bihai County. Although Bihai County is now defined as a zone county, with its current development speed, it will be a matter of time before he will become a Shang County. He can stay in Bihai County for another 2 years. Then you can directly take over the entire Qingzhou. After jumping 3 levels at once, and working in a familiar place, the future is no worse than returning to Beijing. Bai Shan nodded and affirmed, if I have to go back to the capital, I have to go back before May. Inspector Lu shook his head, that's all, then the magistrate Bai will stay, and the deployment of our army's military supplies will be handed over to you. Bai Shan responded. Inspector Lu glanced at him one last time, then turned around and left with his entourage. Order troops, this officer will go to the border in person. Sir, why are you in such a hurry? Inspector Lu said, Bai Shan is right, we can't let the people by the sea suffer from the chaos of the army, and if someone is in a hurry to go home, he should be a favor. We didn't stop Mr. Bai from going home. Fool, this family is not another family. Sigh, the hero is saddened by the beauty, but the official is better, there is no such trouble. My lord, if madam hears this. Shut up, you are the only one who hears this. If you don't say it, how will the lady know? When the emperor's decree arrived, Inspector Lu not only wiped out the chaotic army scattered everywhere, but also wiped out the pirates who had regrouped on the nearby islands again. Bihai County provided all the food, grass, and military salaries consumed. However, after the bandits were suppressed, Bihai County's finances recovered a little. The most important thing was that they also distributed some to the soldiers, so that the soldiers were enthusiastic to suppress the bandits. Bai Shan also got some spoils, and went to find Lu Shishi for pearls. Inspector Lu exchanged with him generously. I only heard that people exchange pearls for gold and silver, but Master Bai is the exact opposite. Bai Shan smiled and said, I have no use for these gold and silver, but I have a wife and daughter at home, and they all like pearls, so it's just right. Inspector Lu asked, the envoys are about to arrive in Qingzhou, and the chaotic army here is almost cleaned up. When does Master Bai plan to return to Bihai County? Bai Shan said sternly, Xiaoguan will go back with the official ship tomorrow. He bowed deeply and said respectfully, Xiaoguan is going back to Beijing to report his duties, and the handover of county affairs still needs to be printed by adults. Inspector Lu waved his hand generously and said, I'll give it to you in a moment, but... He paused and said, Master Bai recommended Fang Xiancheng to take over, but the DPRK may not agree. Master Bai is a talented person, but he has made Bihai County a delicious place. Now I don't know how many people want to take a bite. Fang Xiancheng has no foundation in the court. Bai Shan said, the lower official will send another letter, and whether it succeeds or not depends on the destiny. Inspector Lu nodded, this official will also follow a letter. But no matter who came to take over, Bai Shan had to go back to hand over county affairs and was ready to return to Beijing. Of course, before that, he had to send the mission sent by the imperial court out of the Longqi wharf. When Bai Shan was handing over in Bihai County, Beijing also received his papers. The emperor threw his papers and Lu Shishi's papers on the case, reached out and opened several papers on the side and put them together. Seeing this, the crown prince asked, is the royal father worrying about the position of magistrate in Bihai County? The emperor said, there are many people who want to take over, and there are even Shangxian magistrates who want to be transferred to the past. it's not a mistake to be the Shangxian magistrate to be the Zhongxian magistrate. Why do you want to transfer like this? The prince said indifferently, it's all right. When Bai Shan went to Bihai County, didn't he also demote and transfer? The emperor lifted his eyelids to look at him. Then you have someone you like? No, but Urchin asked Zhou Man privately, and she said that Bihai County is now a cornucopia. If it is to continue to generate money, it will not only benefit the local people of Bihai County, but also benefit the great Jin dynasty. Then it requires an honest and open-minded person. Officials who know the way of business go. Emperor, what if not? Then we need an official who understands the way of business and the current affairs, the prince said. If there is no more, then send a guarded official to go, even if he does nothing, just continue according to the existing rules, then Bihai County will not be too bad. The emperor knocked on the table and said, the county magistrate of Bihai County has no foundation in the court, but he has been operating in Bihai County for many years. The prince said, my son asked Zhou Man, that Fang County chief is not from Bihai County, not even from Qingzhou, but from Leizhou, and his family background is average, even if Bihai County has developed rapidly in the past 5 years, except for the county government to send he has no extra money outside of his house. The emperor asked, do you like this Fang County chancellor? Prince, Bihai County is the hard work of Bai Shan and Zhou Man. Since both of them recommended this person, it means that this person has something special, and at least temporarily defends Bihai County. After being silent for a while, the emperor nodded slightly, and put away the documents on the case. As a result, Bihai County and Bai Shan will be under more pressure. The prince said, with Bai Shan's heart and ability, this matter is not worth mentioning. So it's settled. Zhou Man searched for information from the Chongguan Museum, and learned the news when he passed by the Zhenshifu in front. Zhou Man happily went out of the palace to go home. Bai Jingxing's children were not at home, but in the princess's house opposite the back door, and she held onto her waist to pick up the child. It happened that Bai Erlang sent Yin Or out, and when he saw her, he smiled and asked, in 3 or 4 days, Bai Shan should return to the capital, right? I didn't receive the letter, how did you know? Yin Or smiled slightly, I guess. Zhou Man didn't believe it, and Yin he said, anyway, he will definitely come back before May. For this, he sent a lot of people across the sea to Baisha city to teach the method of drying salt, and he is still rampant in the maritime business. Publicity about this, I heard that the city owner of Baisha city loves and hates him, and the two still fought in Baisha city. Zhou Man was surprised, why didn't I know? No, how did you know? I don't know if it won't work. The weapons that Qingzhou Governor Lu lacked were the depreciation exchanged from my father's hands. I took the lead. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3301. Zhou Man was so shocked that he forgot to speak for a while, and Bai Erlang turned his head to look at Yin Or in shock. You are so bold now. Even the military dare to lead the business. Yin Or, what are you thinking? Bai Shan gave a proposal, and I mentioned it to my father. They talked about it themselves, and His Majesty knows about it. The armament of the Imperial Army has always been the best, and a part of it is depreciated every year. The ordnance that has been replaced is not bad. It is directly returned to some troops or the Ministry of War and distributed. Qingzhou is located in a remote location and is not at an important pass, so no matter whether it is new armament or old ordnance, it cannot be used. Inspector Lu had the intention to strengthen the military to suppress pirates, so he contacted Yin Li through Bai Shan, and Yin Li and the emperor made comments. Yin he said, it's all the army and people of the great Jin dynasty. It is given to other armies, and it is also given to the Qingzhou army, so His Majesty agreed. It's just that Bai Shan has always been cautious, and although he is daring, he is not someone who can contact the army, so Yin, or can't help but be curious, and this attention has noticed Bai Shan's arrangement. He and Zhou Man smiled and said, he has been arranging this matter since last year, and he is obviously in a hurry to return to Beijing. Since His Majesty has already sent him back to Beijing, he will not be delayed on the road. Bai Shan really hurried to the capital, but after the luggage was delayed, he only brought 2 guards back to the capital. When he entered the city, before he arrived, he looked at the sun in the sky and instructed the 2 guards, "You go home to report safety, and I will enter the palace to report on my duties." Yes. Bai Shan hurried into the palace, and when he arrived at the Taiji Hall, the great court meeting was about to end, so he waited outside. Civil and military officials came out of the hall and saw Bai Shan standing by the door. Bai Shan hurriedly smiled back. If you don't know them, you can't help but take a few more glances, and whisper to the people around you, This is Lord Zhou's husband, Bai Shan, magistrate of Bihai County. It turned out to be him, and he came back so fast. Zhou Man and Yang Heshu were left behind. This year, the Duhufu has also purchased too many over-the-counter medicines, of which penicillin accounts for more than half of them. Did they drink penicillin as water? Your Ministry of Households even approved it? Yang Heshu was about to speak when he caught a glimpse of the person standing outside the door out of the corner of his eyes. He immediately stopped and couldn't help but smile. The speed is quite fast. Did you enter the palace as soon as you entered Beijing? Zhou Man looked up and saw Bai Shan walking over with a smile on his face, stunned for a while. Bai Shan replied to Yang Heshu, but stared at Zhou Man, "Well, I'm going to resign to your majesty." He looked Zhou Man up and down, and when he saw that her face was still ruddy, he restrained himself and stood opposite Yang Heshu and whispered to her, "I'm back." Zhou Man's eyes were slightly red, and his eyes were foggy. He nodded and said, "Are you hungry? I have some snacks here." She lowered her head and took out a purse from her sleeve, but didn't hand it to him. Seeing this, Bai Shan reached out to take it, and a tear fell on the back of his hand. Bai Shan couldn't help but take 2 steps forward, holding her purse in one hand and supporting her shoulders in the other, and whispered, "I can't bear it, I won't snatch your snacks." Yang Heshu turned to block the eyes of the others, looked at them helplessly and said, "Your Majesty has just retreated from the court, you should have a rest, you go to the side hall and wait. Lord Zhou, don't you want to report to His Majesty about the pharmacy, why don't you?" Together. Bai Shan nodded gratefully to Yang Heshu, took Zhou Man's hand to protect her, and went to the side hall. Yang Heshu walked on the other side of Zhou Man, and after they entered the door, he recruited the servant who was guarding the side hall and said with a smile, "The magistrate of Bihai County entered the palace to report his duties. Get some food." Yang Heshu handed the other a silver horn and said, "Drink another basin of warm water." He doesn't want to meet His Majesty in a dusty face, so he needs to freshen up. The maid glanced at Zhou Man and Bai Shan who had entered the door, reached out to take the money, and bowed in response. Yang Heshu glanced into the room, shook his head and smiled, then stood at the door and looked up at the sky. Entering the room, Bai Shan raised Zhou Man's face, and seeing her tears, he wiped it away with his fingers, and said in a low voice, "You have been wronged." Zhou Man shook his head, wiped the tears from his face with the back of his hand, and whispered, "I'm not wronged, but for some reason, the tears just fell out of control." Zhou Man touched his belly, "I'm always emotionally unstable when I'm pregnant, and that's probably the reason for me too." Bai Shan looked at her serious expression, and felt pity in his heart. He couldn't help but stretch out his hand to take her whole body into his arms. "Silly girl, you are wronged, it's just that you don't know it. Political affairs are busy, even healthy people are under great pressure. What's more, you are still pregnant, I am the father of the child and your husband, but I can't stand by your side or share the pressure for you. Isn't this your grievance? Bai Shan held her tightly in his arms and said softly, I'm back, I won't be separated from you for so long in the future. Half a year seemed to him a long time, so long that he thought he hadn't seen Zhou Man for several years. They have never been apart for so long since they met. Zhou Man's tears had already stopped, but at this moment his eyes couldn't help but become sour. The tears fell drop by drop, his heart was sour, and he had to say in a hoarse voice, it's strange, I clearly don't feel wronged, but I couldn't hold back the tears, it must be because of pregnancy. Bai Shan hugged her and couldn't help laughing, his eyes were a little red, and he responded, yes, yes, it's because of pregnancy, whatever you say is right. Zhou Man squeezed his fist and gave it to him, what you said is obviously wrong, and you said that everything I said was right. Zhou Man pushed Bai Shan away and wiped his face with a handkerchief, only to realize that his face was a little dirty. She stared blankly at Bai Shan's clothes, only to realize that the clothes on his shoulders and chest were wet, because it was dark clothes are hard to see. She reached out and patted the clothes on his body, and the dust flew up for a while. Zhou Man couldn't help coughing, she said, she just wiped a little moisturizing cream, how could the handkerchief be gray when she wiped her face? Bai Shan also noticed it, and hurriedly took out a handkerchief to wipe her face, holding back his smile and said, it's my fault, there's a lot of dust on the road, Bai Shan picked up the teapot and was thinking about pouring some tea when he was about to leave, when a waiter came in with a basin of water and 2 trays of snacks. The two immediately took 2 steps back and separated. The waiter just pretended that he couldn't see the 2 people who were about to stick together, put down the water and snacks, and saluted, Master Zhou, Master Bai, this is what Master Yang is coming for the 2 of you. Bai Shan quickly thanked him, and after he went out, he wiped Zhou Man's face with a handkerchief and said, don't cry anymore, it will be bad if you see your majesty in a while with red eyes. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3302. Zhou Man whispered, I'm not in a hurry, I don't have to report back to your majesty, I'll go back to the Imperial Hospital in a while. After thinking about it, Bai Shan nodded and said in a low voice, all right, there are a lot of things in Bihai County, I don't know how long I will stay in the palace, you go back to the Thai hospital first, and wait for me in the Thai hospital when you go to the office, and I'll pick you up. Zhou Man nodded. Bai Shan then stood a little further away from Zhou Man, patted the dust on his body, and then washed his face and hands with water. Yang Heshu, who was standing outside the door, heard that there was no movement inside for a long time, so he coughed lightly outside and pushed the door in. Bai Shan hurriedly wringed out the veil, stepped forward and saluted, Brother Yang. Yang Heshu pointed to the chair and said, we don't need to be too polite. Someone has already gone to report to His Majesty. Someone should come to invite you later. Let's sit and rest first. Zhou Man pushed the dim sum towards him, eat some to fill your stomach. Bai Shan smiled and took a piece of dessert and ate it. Brother, do you have something to report to your majesty? Yang Heshu nodded, but it's not a matter of urgency, let's see if His Majesty announces it. If not, I'll go back to the household department in a while. Bai Shan understood that he was here to send them here on purpose. Bai Shan ate 2 pieces of snacks, and the emperor who had rested sent someone over to invite Bai Shan. Master Bai, your majesty calls. The chamberlain turned to Yang Heshu and said to Zhou Man, your majesty said, I have to discuss matters with Kui Shangshu and others this morning. The 2 adults are not in a hurry, but they can report back later in the afternoon. Zhou Man and Yang Heshu responded quickly, glanced at Bai Shan, nodded slightly and left. Bai Shan tidied up his clothes and went to see the emperor with his inner servant. Not only the emperor was in the hall, but the prince, Zhao Qiuagong, and Kui Shangshu were also there. Bai Shan lowered his eyes, Zhao Qiuagong is here, it must be because of the war in Qingzhou, Kui Shangshu. Is this His Majesty asking him to decide on the spot to stay? Bai Shan knelt down and saluted. The emperor raised his hand and said, "No need to be too polite, just sit back and answer. This is Kui Shangshu from the Ministry of Officials. You haven't seen it before, have you?" "Yes." Bai Shan turned around and saluted Kui Shangshu. "Kui Shangshu. Tell me, why did Baikya suddenly violate the border?" The emperor said, "It's not clear what you wrote in your brochure, but it's just for the salt field, but the salt field in Baisha city has just been built, and it's winter and spring again, so it's good for the sun. How much salt?" "Bai Shandao, your majesty, Baikya has always been ambitious, and it is only for profit. Since the construction of the pier in Longqi, the sea trade has become more and more prosperous. Jin merchant ships." Zhou Man went down the steps one step at a time. Yang Heshu walked beside her and asked with a smile, "Is your heart at ease now?" Zhou Mangkong smiled embarrassedly at Yang Heshu, the corners of his eyes were still a little red. "Thank you, brother Yang." Yang Heshu shook his head. "No, you can't let Manchao when we watch my Dajin officials cry on the spot, right?" Zhou Man's face turned red. However, Yang Heshu stopped, turned to look at her and said with a smile, "You are still young, it doesn't matter if you cry, don't be embarrassed." "Zhou Man, I'm a mother now." "Yeah," Yang Heshu sighed. Back then, the children who only covered their faces with books and slept in the grass hut with their hands and feet stretched out are all mothers, but the ministers in the court and the middle are still older than you, so you still don't have to be shy, and it's not like other people haven't cried. Zhou Man asked curiously, "Is anyone still crying?" Yang Heshu raised his hand and tapped her on the head with a smile, "I'm curious again, don't inquire." Zhou Man touched his head. Yang Heshu had already smiled and said, "Let's go, I'll take you to the intersection. I'm going to leave the palace and return to the household department." Zhou Man stopped asking, went down the steps together and separated. Bai Shan's debriefing took a very long time this time. Zhao Qiuagong and Kui Shangshu left one after another. The emperor and crown prince Bai Shan were in the hall. Even lunch was used in the hall. No one knew what they said inside. In the afternoon, when he went to the office, Zhou Man waited in the hospital with his chin up. Xiao Yuanzhang passed by her office twice. Seeing that she was really thinking, he knocked on the door and said, "It's all over, and you don't handle the official documents, so what are you still doing here?" "Zhou Man, wait." Xiao Yuan's teeth were sour for a moment, and he asked, "It's all down, he won't come, you won't go to him." "Forget it, what if I miss it? I have a big stomach and it's inconvenient to run around, so let's wait for him here," Zhou Man said, "he will always come to pick me up." Xiao Yuanzhang turned around and went out and brought a booklet over. "Then, while you wait, help me check some things." Zhou Man took it over and looked at it, and said with disgust, "Yuanzhang, didn't our imperial physician office snatch several Jinqi and Mingjing in this year? They have a lot of things in their hands. This batch of things is especially important. I need to review it. You also know that I don't play well. You can check it for me." Zhou Man could only respond, took out his pen and abacus, "Okay, I'll work for another 7 days anyway, and I'm going to take a long vacation in the next 10 days. Xiao Yuan responded, "I know, don't worry, I will let you go on vacation on time." Bai Shan knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the emperor, then got up and stepped back. The emperor watched him exit, smiled, and said, "Not bad. I thought the royal father would feel pity." The prince frowned. "Isn't it the best way for him to go to the east at this time?" "It's the best thing to do," the emperor said calmly. "He's young, and it's okay to take more detours in his career, as long as he is happy." The prince paused for a while, and couldn't help but look at the emperor. Why did the father and the emperor suddenly grow in love with each other? The emperor glanced at him and said, "Bai Shan is a minister. He can be affectionate with his children, as long as you are not affectionate with them. Prince. The emperor got up and said, "Okay, you go, I'm going to see your mother too." The prince stood up silently and bowed to send the emperor away. Bai Shan calmed his breath outside the hospital before walking in. The doctor, who was still working overtime, saw him and said, "Yo, Master Bai came here? He's still breathing, come and have a drink." "Water." "Go and go, what water did you drink after running?" "Lord Bai came to pick up Lord Zhou, right? Lord Zhou is waiting for you in the office." Bai Shan blushed slightly and saluted them and went to find Zhou Man in the office. When Zhou Man saw him, he immediately closed the fold in his hand. "Are you here?" Bai Shan stepped forward to support her. "Can you go to the office?" "Okay, this document is not mine, I can continue to check it tomorrow, let's go." In the palace, it's not easy for the two of them to be too close, so Bai Shan let go of Zhou Man's hand and just walked outside the palace side by side with her. "I think you are thinner than when you were a child with the eldest sister, aren't you too much tired?" "Zhou Man, no, but the appetite is really not very good recently. I will be able to take maternity leave later in the day," she said. "I'm waiting for the court's appointment, and I also have a long break. I'll accompany you at home, and my eldest sister." "It is good." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3303. Bai Shan helped Zhou Man to get out of the car, and then looked up at the gate of the new mansion, saw the three characters "Country Lord's Mansion" written on the plaque. He couldn't help laughing, turned around and gave Zhou Man a big gift. "Miss, for my husband. I'm going to eat soft rice again." Zhou Man narrowed his eyes with a smile, and waved his hand generously. "Eat. Eat whatever you want." The door opened, and the servants of the mansion came out in an orderly manner, bowed and saluted. "Welcome the master to the mansion." Bai Shan smiled slightly and stretched out his hand to help Zhou Man enter the door. Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Zheng waited inside the door with Bai Jingxing's children. When they saw the couple coming back, their eyes were slightly wet. "It's good to come back, it's good to come back." The little boy Bai Jingxing was separated from his father for half a year, and he hadn't forgotten about him, so he looked at him for a while and then jumped into his arms. "Daddy." Bai Shan touched her little face. "Daddy is dirty, I will hug you after I change clothes." "Zheng," she said, "the hot water is ready for you, go take a bath and change clothes." Bai Shan responded and helped Zhou Man back to the main courtyard. After looking around, he smiled and said, "Although the scenery is not as delicate as Zhou's house, the house is open. Go take a bath first, and you will take a closer look at the house tomorrow." Zhou Man said, "There is a door in our backyard facing the princess mansion, so our house is now separated from Bai Er by the street, and he is not very busy, it's easy to find him to play with when you're resting." Bai Shan said with disgust, "I don't want to play with him." That being said, Bai Shan still said to Zhou Man, "This time, I will share some of the spoils of the pirates. The convoy is at the back. When it's time, you can share some with him." Zhou Man should go. In the evening, the family of five had a reunion dinner, and they talked together for a long time. The couple did not have time to talk alone until they lay on the bed. Zhou Man leaned against Bai Shan's arms, obviously already very sleepy, but he refused to close his eyes to sleep, but pulled him and asked, "Why does it take so long to debrief today?" Bai Shan smiled and said, "His Majesty and the Crown Prince are very concerned about the people's livelihood in Qingzhou, especially the future development of Bihai County, so it's too long to say." Zhou Man tried his best to look up at him and asked, "Has your Majesty told you about the official position arrangement?" Zhou Man frowned and said, "Before you came back, I asked Kui Shangshu and there are 3 suitable positions. I heard what Kui Shangshu said. He prefers to let you go to Luozhu, which should also be what His Majesty meant. Luozhu is the fief of King Gong, but it is still the eastern capital. Since King Gong was punished, his fief has been reduced, and there is still a lot to do there. It is the center of the Central Plains, so it has a great impact. Joe Man is getting more and more sleepy, his eyes were almost closed, but he grabbed Bai Shan's shirt and said, "But it's not far from the capital. At least it is much closer than Qingzhou." Bai Shan patted her back gently, coaxed her to sleep, and said, "Go to sleep first, and I'll talk to you tomorrow." No, Joe Man is so sleepy that his eyes are closed, and he still insists, "Tell me, or I won't sleep well at night." Bai Shan pondered for a moment, then sighed, "Okay, let me tell you, I decided to stay in Beijing." Joe Man opened his eyes and looked at Bai Shan in shock. "Stay in the capital? You can take over the prefects of a place if your achievements in the past 5 years are released, and when you come back." Bai Shan stopped her words and smiled. "Your assumption is that when everything goes well, but things haven't happened yet, you can't just think about the good and not the bad." Joe Man asked, "Then tell me, what's the disadvantage of going out at this time?" She frowned and said, "With your qualifications, it's best to continue to broadcast at this time." Bai Shan hugged her and said, "There are many disadvantages. Being separated from you, unable to participate in the growth of the 2 children, and being filial to grandmother and mother." He paused, stretched out his hand and touched her bulging belly and said, "Pregnancy is difficult, childbirth is even more difficult, and raising a child is even more difficult. I can't put all these responsibilities on you alone, not to mention you are in court. Its role is no less than mine, and the burden on my shoulders is heavier than mine." Joe Man was speechless. "And my grandmother and mother," Bai Shan said softly, "in these years, I have devoted myself to studying, and have done a lot of things. I haven't spent much time with my mother, and my grandmother is already old, so I can no longer leave them in the capital. I also want my grandmother to work hard for my career." When Joe Man heard it, he felt a little guilty. "I went back to Beijing, and my grandmother has been working hard for me. I can't help with family matters." "Bai Shan, if you say that, I don't even have the face to see you. You still have 2 children." Joe Man thought for a while and then said, "Okay, if you don't let it go, you can do whatever you want. What kind of position do you stay in Beijing?" "Although there is no decree, but His Majesty and the Crown Prince intend to let me go to the province." Joe Man's eyes lit up. "Advice to the doctor." Bai Shan couldn't help reaching out to touch her forehead. "It's not burning. What do you think? Do you think it's possible?" He said, "It's in the middle of a job." Joe Man smiled. "It's not bad at all, it's the 5th grade, that is. It's just going around and going out for a while. After returning, the official position is the same as that of Zongshu Shiren before the release." Bai Shan couldn't help laughing. "Sounds like a joke, doesn't it?" Joe Man muttered, "That's why I guessed that the doctor was advising. But obviously, good things can't all fall on their family, so no miracle happened to Bai Shan." 3 days after Bai Shan returned to Beijing to report his duties, His Majesty issued a decree to promote Bai Shan as a minister under his family. The Ministry of Personnel quickly issued an official document, asking him to choose a time to return to his hometown and take office. Bai Shan went to the Ministry of Personnel to apply for postponing the vacation, and decided to save the vacation and take it later. This kind of thing often happens, but the Ministry of Personnel has no opinion. After completing the formalities for him, he said, "Master Bai, then you will take office the day after tomorrow?" "Yes." After completing the formalities, the Secretary of the Ministry of Personnel smiled and said, "Congratulations to Mr. Bai." Bai Shan smiled and said, "Thank you." As soon as he left, an official next to him grabbed him and said, "Don't talk nonsense." "What's wrong?" He jumped 3 levels in a row, and he was promoted to the official position of the 5th rank. Isn't this worthy of congratulations? Do you know what position he was in before he was released? What position? Zongshu Shiren. Did that make a mistake and put it out? No, but to gain experience. How did you become a magistrate? Zhang Shushi is a magistrate. Even if he can't be a provincial governor, he should be a long history, Sima, etc. How can you be a magistrate of Yizhong County? It's Xia County, then Bihai County was only Xia County when he went, and Zhong County was promoted later. How old were you when he was released? It's only a crown, how could it be a prefect? Then he was lonely this time. After 5 years, he went around and returned to Beijing, but he was still a 5th grade. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3304. What are you doing together? When you are scattered, you don't have to worry about eating radishes. People have made countless contributions in 5 years, and their political achievements are clearly recorded in our official documents. 5th rank officials who have registered in front of His Majesty, what are you talking about here? The right servant of the Ministry of Personnel dispersed the people, and when everyone left, he snorted coldly, turned around and went into the room to return to Kui Shangshu. Sir, it's time for the department to rectify, too much talk. Kui Shangshu recalled the last time he was in front of the imperial court, and nodded. It is true that there are many words. This white man not only has the grace of the prince, but also has the heart of the prince, and his future prospects are limitless, and there is no need for the officials to offend him. Don't look at 5 years ago, just look at his promotion from the 17th rank magistrate to the 5th rank. This is a big happy event. I wonder if the county master's mansion will entertain guests. What, do you want to go? The right servant smiled. It also depends on whether the county master's office is willing to invite you. After thinking about it, Kui Shangshu shook his head. Bai Zhou and his family have always kept a low profile. Zhou Man didn't celebrate when he was crowned a county master, and he shouldn't have a banquet this time. Bai Shan didn't take this to heart at all, and after the appointment, he just took the family back to his father-in-law's house, and the two families had a reunion dinner together as a celebration. He still had 2 days to rest, and it was time to tidy up the study. Bai Jingxing's little boy diligently took a rag and wiped it everywhere. When Bai Erlang led Bai Ruyu in, she was half-crawled into the bookcase and put all the books in it. It was vacated and scattered all over the ground. Bai Erlang bent down and picked up a book to read, wide-eyed. Why is it my book? Bai Shan glanced at it indifferently and said, how good, the bottom of the box is pressed. Bai Erlang looked around and inserted his book on a shelf that was neither high nor short. Good books should be placed in this position. You will be embarrassed to put it in the same place as the sage book. Bai Erlang looked at the Analects of Confucius, Book of Rites and other books in the same row, and felt a little embarrassed, so he could only take it down, but I don't want to put it below. Bai Shan allowed him to find a place to put it on his own. Bai Erlang took his 2 children to pick out his own books. Seeing that there was an empty bookshelf at the back, he chose a good place to put them on. De Bauer, these books can be used as family heirlooms in the future. Bai Shan and Bai Ruyu said, just listen to what your father says. When the 2 of them sorted out the books and went out, Zhou Man also came back from the office. Come on, Zhuangzi sent a basket of peaches over today. I ate one, and it was sweet. The servant brought up a plate of washed peaches. Bai Shan chose one to take a bite, and nodded, yes, Brother Yang will come and let him bring some back. Zhou Man responded, looked left and right and asked, where's Yin or, haven't you come yet? Bai Erlang, he is very harmonious with Dao now. He moved to Suan 2 days ago and is expected to come back from Guanli today. Bai Shan, I haven't seen Dao and Daoxu for many years. I will have a day off tomorrow. Why don't you visit Suan temple? Will you come with me? Bai Erlang pointed to his nose and asked, "Me? It's not who you are, Man Bao is going to the Yamen." Bai Erlang exclaimed, "I'll go to the Ya as well." "Aren't you allowed to arrive late and leave early?" Bai Shan looked him up and down, "Otherwise how did you come to my house today?" Bai Erlang couldn't find a reason. After a while, he nodded helplessly, "Okay, I'll go with you." When Yin Or arrived, it happened that Yang Heshu had just arrived, and the two families met at the door and came in together. Yang Heshu's second son was a little younger than Bai Jingxing's little friend. He took his brother's hand and walked over the steps, then ran towards Bai Jingxing, grabbed her hand and said, "Sister." Bai Jingxing shook off his hand, "I'm elder sister." It doesn't matter if she is the younger sister of Big Bo or she was born a few hours late anyway, it would be too much to call someone shorter than her younger sister. Zhou Man asked their 4 children to play, pulled Mrs. Yang and said, "Sister-in-law, let's wait in the garden. The table is set in the garden. We can enjoy the scenery while eating." Mrs. Yang smiled and nodded, "Okay." The pavilion in the garden was set up with large tables, and the servants gave them some snacks and fruit plates. Children played in the garden, and adults sat in the pavilion and talked. Madame Yang looked around and smiled, "Your garden looks a lot more lush than it was a year ago." In a spring, the flowers and plants were prosperous, and they grew naturally. It was also thanks to the flowers and plants sent by Princess Changjia, otherwise the garden would not have been so good. Bai Shan made tea, poured a cup of tea for everyone, and asked Yin Or, "Why did you live in Guanli?" "Yin Yu, my grandmother is not in good health. Recently, whenever she sees me, she brings up the matter of starting a family. In order not to disturb her recuperation, I avoid the Taoist temple, but it is not bad to live in the temple. It is also very pleasant to discuss Taoism." Yin Or's sixth sister now has 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters, all surnamed Yin, which has made Mrs. Yin enough of her great-grandmother's addiction. She basically does not mention Yin or starting a family in these years. The child is estimated to be sick, and he realizes that there is not much time left, so he mentioned it again. Yin Or looked at Zhou Man, "Wait for you to rest, I want to invite you to my house." Zhou Man nodded, "Okay." She understood what he meant, cut off his ties, she did it a few years ago, it's simple. Before the rest of the imperial court, Zhou Man handed over the affairs in the imperial hospital to Xiao Yuanzheng and imperial physician Lu. The imperial physician office was handed over to Lord Luo, and the Chongguan pavilion took some materials and took a rest. It's a long vacation. Bai Shan went to the Chongguan Museum to carry things for her after her appointment. The official in charge of registering at the Chongguan Museum checked the things she took away, and warned, "Master Zhou, these books can't be damaged. You have to pay them back when you take leave." "Zhou Man, don't worry, when have I damaged books?" The official muttered, "Other officials can only bring out 2 books on vacation." Zhou Man heard it and immediately said, "I have the prince's handwriting." "Yes, so you are always right." The official silently handed the booklet to her and asked her to sign it. Zhou Man signed, pressed his handprint, and with a wave of his hand, let Bai Shan remove the book. In fact, there are not many copies, the general manager only has 8 volumes, but in addition to the books, there are also some newspapers and manuscripts, which are quite a lot. He sorted out the things and put them in the basket, holding the basket in one hand and supporting Zhou Man in the other. "Let's go." The two went out of the palace together, and happened to meet the prince returning to the East Palace. When they saw the 2 people who were on the side of the road, they stopped. "Is this going to take a long vacation?" Zhou Man's bow should be. The prince nodded and took the person away first, and when he returned to the Zhan Shifu, he and Guo Zhan said, "Choose another person from the Daming Palace." Guo Zhenji said with a smile, "Yes, His Highness is considerate to his subordinates, and it should also be known to Lord Bai." The prince waved his hand indifferently and said, "No need, let the provincial government select people as soon as possible, the speed of Daming Palace is faster, it is only wet in April now, wait until June and July, it will be stuffy and wet, stay in Taiji Palace. It's really uncomfortable. Guo Zhan should go." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3305. Last year, Dajin's financial revenue was good. Especially in recent years, due to the promotion of new rice and new wheat varieties, the grain yields in various places have been high. Although we can't make white rice open for everyone to eat, life is indeed much better. Therefore, the Ministry of Work and the Ministry of Rights wanted to build the Daming Palace, and all the ministers agreed to allocate funds. In order to speed up the progress and to ensure that the project funds are used for the project, after consultation, Baiguan decided to send a grant from the province to manage the matter. The matter was selected by the Zhan Shifu. Zhan Shifu favored Bai Shan at first. Not only because of his good grades in scientific examinations and good math skills, but also because he has served as a county magistrate and has experience in building docks. They are all big projects, and there must be some similarities between them, so Bai Shan is the most suitable. Because of the prince's words, this matter turned around and fell on the other party's head, but few people knew that Zhan Shifu was interested in Bai Shan at the beginning. So Fang Wei sighed while packing his things. Why was he so unlucky to be selected? Bai Shan didn't know that this matter had anything to do with him. He handled the matter in his hands well, and thought that he had promised to take Zhou Man to eat the Xiang steamed pot at the end of the street today, and he moved a little faster. As soon as he put away his things, he said goodbye to the crowd. When he was gone, the remaining three looked at each other and sighed. Seeing this, Fang Wei said, "What are you sighing? It's me who went to Daming Palace. Can't I sympathize with you? Okay, you're going to the Daming Palace tomorrow, how about we treat you to a drink in the Zhuangyuan building tonight? What's the point of the Zhuangyuan building? Be more generous and directly invite the wine from the Spring Wind building." "That's right, Master Bai won't go anyway, there's no need to go to the Zhuangyuan building, just go to the Spring Breeze building." Bai Shan joined the job, and the three people in the business and his well-connected colleagues in the province invited Bai Shan to drink and eat, and Bai Shan naturally invited him back. Both times at the restaurant, and later when someone asked Bai Shan to ask for a drink in the Spring Wind building, he was rejected. Although it was only once, everyone knew that Bai Shan would not go to Chunfenglu, so if you asked Bai Shan, they would avoid these places. It's not that Bai Shan was so fierce when he refused, but that when he refused, he glanced at the direction of the hospital, saying that he had to go back to take the child, and everyone understood. There are actually quite a few officials in the imperial court who are afraid of them, but their colleagues are not afraid of those wives, and they like to coax them to resist the tigress at home, but they don't dare to deal with Zhou Manchu. After all, being an official of the same dynasty, unlike the wives of other officials, as long as they are willing, they may never meet in their lifetime. But Zhou Man, they didn't dare to look up and see him. The three adults in the incident went out of the imperial city and went to the Spring Breeze building. Fang Wei was depressed because of the incident, so he couldn't help drinking too much. After drinking too much, he couldn't hold back his words, so he complained while hugging her daughter, "It's a pity I don't have a lady like that, otherwise why would I have been working hard in the court for more than 10 years before I got promoted to the official position, while others have 5 years. The time has gone from being a 17th rank official to a 5th rank." Niu Wei was still sober in the matter, he brought a drink to him, and retorted with a smile, "That's not what you said, Master Bai has been in office for 7 years, it really compares, he was already a 5th rank middle book 5 years ago." Shiren, who didn't know that His Majesty intended to cultivate him when he was released back then. Now he is just returning to his standard. Brother Niu is right, Li Kaishi shook his head and said, But what I don't understand is, why does he want to go back to Beijing to enter the province? With his qualifications, he should continue to go abroad at this time. Yes, Shanghu's prefect is well deserved, and when he comes back as prefect, with his achievements, it is not a matter of course to be promoted. Why bother to come back and compete with us? Fang Wei's Hong, who knows, maybe it's because of the hard work of the outside world, and it's not as rich as Beijing, so you don't want to go out. Niu Ke shook his head and said, no, no, Master Bai has even gone to the western regions, so why is he afraid of hard work? And because of his family background, he will never treat himself badly in terms of food and accommodation, so where is the hard work? He smiled and said, I'm afraid it's the hero who is saddened by Mirenguan, because Lord Zhou is in Beijing, so he stayed in Beijing. Isn't this heroic shortness of breath? I don't know if it's because of shortness of breath, but Lord Bai is really scared. The last time I rode across the main street, I happened to see their husband and wife shopping. Lord Bai didn't fulfill Lord Zhou's wish, and Lord Zhou stepped directly on Lord Bai's foot. It hurts to look at me. Overnight, the rumors of Bai Shan's fear spread all over the capital, and within 2 days, the rumors of Zhou Man beating his husband began to circulate in the market. The rumors were not popular, but it was widespread. When Zhou Man went to the Yin mansion to consult Mrs. Yin, several aunts of the Yin family kept peeking at her. The expression on his face was about to fall, and Zhou Man couldn't even pretend he couldn't see it. She withdrew her hand and smiled with Mrs. Yin, I'll change the recipe for you in a moment, and give you a few more needles to make you feel better. Mrs. Yin nodded with a smile, okay, thank you Lord Zhou. Mrs. Yin asked as usual, I wonder how my grandson's body is doing recently. Zhou Mandao, it's fairly stable. As long as you clean your mind and nurture your body, it will not be a problem to live for more than 10 years. Mrs. Yin was stunned for a moment. This time is different from the previous one. She hurriedly asked, pure your heart and raise your body? Then, what if you get a wife and start a family? Zhou Man shook his head, I'm afraid it will damage your life expectancy. Mrs. Yin was a little disappointed, but she was prepared for such a result, and her face quickly adjusted, Lord Lao Zhou is here. Zhou Man got up and nodded slightly, turned around and went out to prescribe the medicine. She handed the prescription to the servants of the Yin family, and then looked at the aunts of the Yin family who followed up to ask about the situation. The old lady's body is the same as before, since she is old, we will try to make her feel better. She paused and looked at them curiously, several sisters, is there something on my face, or did I brush my hair wrong today? Why do you keep looking at me? Sister Yin waved her hands again and again, no, no, Master Zhou looks very good today. Zhou Man, if the sisters have something to say, I don't mind. The sisters of the Yin family were even more hesitant to speak, but after opening their mouths a few times, they still said, it's okay, it's okay. Zhou Man. She asked Mrs. Yin to prepare the needle, and she didn't leave after the needle, she turned around and went to find Yin Or. She knew a lot about Yin Or's yard, knowing that the sisters were going home today, so he was too lazy to go out, so he leaned in the yard to read with a book in his hand. Hearing the footsteps, he raised his eyes lazily, and when he saw it was Zhou Man, he sat up straight and asked with a smile, why are you here? I've finished watching the illness, and I have also completed your entrustment. Shouldn't you go out and turn left to go home? Why are you here? Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3306. Zhou Man sat across from him and said, but I think your sisters are a little weird. You help me to ask what happened. Yin Or looked puzzled, what can happen to them? It's not their accident, it's me, Zhou Man mused, you sisters are the most well-informed people in the capital, I suspect that some people speak ill of me in private, otherwise they won't hesitate to say anything. Appearance. When Yin he heard it, he put down the book in his hand, thought for a while, and said, "Wait." After saying that, he invited Longevity and asked him to prepare some refreshments for Joe Man, and he got up and went out. After 2/4 of an hour, he came back with a strange expression, and said to Joe Man, who was eating with gusto, "It is said outside that Bai Shan is afraid of the inside." Joe Man retorted, "How could he be afraid of himself? I've never seen him afraid of me." "Yin," he said, "you also said that you beat Bai Shan." Joe Man's eyes widened, "Impossible, when did I hit him? And am I that kind of person?" Yin or spread his hands, "That's what the rumors are like, but my sisters say that there are not many people who say it is rumored, it's just privately circulated, and they are also, the servants in the family occasionally talk about it." The 6 sisters of the Yin family are well informed. Naturally, the servants in their family are especially sensitive to rumors and other things, so even if it is a small-scale rumor, they can know it, and they know it better than the average person. Yin Yudeo, my eldest sister, said that the rumors came from the Spring Wind Tower, and some storytellers brought them out in private when they gave private lectures. There are also 2 types of storytellers. One is to set up a storytelling table in a restaurant, and the guests in the building are all listeners. One is to pick up guests, go to the box or the master's house to tell people to amuse them. This kind of gossip is most likely to spread in the second scenario. Joe Man was puzzled. Chunfenglu. Strange, I haven't offended anyone recently, is this against me on purpose? Yin or shook his head, it's just gossip, it shouldn't be targeted on purpose. Thinking of something, Yin or couldn't help but smile, and it's not groundless. Some people say that they saw you stepping on Bai Shan's feet on the street. Joe Man was confused and couldn't help asking Keek in his heart, is there any? Keek, yes. After Keek answered, he also helped her recall. Joe Man was stunned. Bai Shan teased her, what happened when she stepped on him? Yin or looked at her expression and said with a smile, that seems to be true, and it's not entirely a rumor. Joe Man, which side are you standing on? Yin, he said, although these rumors are not very good for your reputation, they have little impact. Even the imperial censor would disdain to impeach such trivial matters between husband and wife. There are many ministers in the DPRK who are afraid of the inside. Everyone said in private that when they attacked people the most, they would laugh at them. Joe Man thought for a while, his shoulders slumped, it's not easy to clarify, it's just, who is going sip? It's better not to let me know. Yin or thought for a while, then got up and said, let's go, I'll take you back. If you're really unhappy, there is another way to go to the street with Bai Shan for a few days, and maybe the rumors will disappear. Regarding this matter, Bai Erlang said happily, actually, this is not entirely a bad thing, at least no one will ask Bai Shan to go to places like Chunfenglu to play in the future. Joe Man, I don't hold back. The teacup in Bai Erlang's hand almost fell, don't you want to play too? Bai Shandao, I haven't heard that Chunfenglu has a good show recently. Yin, he said, it's like you've watched the usual show. Mingda felt that they were all talking on paper, and said, we can go to the Spring Breeze building at some time to have a look. It just so happens that you two travel together, and when Man Bao behaves a little more gentle and virtuous, the rumors will be self-defeating. Bai Erlang immediately said, I will go to Zhao Liaolang tomorrow to ask what good shows are in Chunfenglu. As soon as Bai Erlang opened his mouth, before he could finish his words, Zhao Liaolang patted him on the shoulder excitedly and said, okay, my brother, you've finally come to your senses. Do you know how to play in the Spring Breeze building? He looked left and right, and said in a low voice, but if you go, why do you still say it in the palace? There are a lot of eyeliners in the palace. If your majesty and the prince know about this, you must not take off a layer of skin. Bai Erlang, what are you thinking? I went with Mingda. I just wanted to ask you what good shows are there and when they will be performed. Zhao Liaolang was startled. You still want to take the princess with you when you go to the Spring Wind Tower? Didn't you take MRS in-law with you before? That's different, Zhao Liaolang said. That's because there are Warren performances from Jiangnan, which are rare to see, so I brought my wife to watch the fun, the performance of Chunfenglu at this moment. Zhao Liaolang thought about it for a while and then lowered his voice. The only thing that the couple can enjoy together is the dance music performed every Monday and Friday, but are you sure you want to go? Bai Erlang said, not only are we going, but Zhou Man and Bai Shan are also going. Zhao Liaolang, no, didn't Zhou Man take maternity leave? Going to the Chunfeng Tower with a big belly. Bai Erlang didn't take it seriously. What's the matter? She lives very freely now, except for outpatient clinics that can't be pushed aside. She rests at home the rest of the time, and the mountain in Suandugwan can climb up, but she can't go there. Did you drink tea and enjoy the fun in the Spring Breeze building? Who goes to the Spring Breeze building for tea? Zhao Liaolang gave him a thumbs up and asked, when are you going? Go on the 25th day, 23 today, 25 the day after tomorrow. Zhao Liaolang immediately said, then I will also take my wife to go shopping, and we will be together when the time comes. Bai Erlang waved his hand indifferently and said, see you at Chunfenglu. If you see it, you can sit together, and if you don't see it, forget it. After the two of them finished speaking, Bai Erlang threw his hands back to the Hanlin Academy, while Zhao Liaolang continued to patrol with his sword on his back, his face full of excitement. It was so much fun, it felt more exciting than watching an Warren show. Zhao Liaolang took this matter to heart, and that day, he called several classmates together with friends, and specially told them to bring his wife with him. But Bai Shan and the others are very ordinary. Although they have never been to Chunfenglu, they are curious, but they are not very excited to watch the performance. Could the dance music in Chunfenglu be the same as that produced by the palace in the classroom? They just went to gain knowledge and refute a rumor by the way, and they were not really looking forward to the performance. So they take it slow and not in a hurry. After dinner, Bai Shan and Zhou Man also played with Bai Jingxing's little friend, and when it was getting dark, they handed her over to the Zheng family. Then they went out holding hands, and they met Bai Er and the others at the intersection and went to pick her up. Yen or together. Arriving at the entrance of Chunfenglu, the old bustard was already waiting, and greeted him with a handkerchief. Oh, ladies and gentlemen are here, please come in quickly, the seats are reserved for you. Zhou Man was shocked, can you still reserve a place in Chunfeng Tower? Good night. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3307. The old man was stunned for a moment. Someone came to book a seat in the county master's mansion this morning, I thought. Although very few people in their brothel Chuan came to book a seat in the morning, since it is the county master's mansion, they wouldn't take this kind of thing to open them. Joke, right? Bai Shan said, I ordered it since he was coming, he naturally had to sit in a good seat and have a good time. Let's go. Bai Shan took Zhou Man's hand, go in and have a look. The entrance of Chunfenglu is a lobby with a large table in the middle. At this time, a performer is playing on it, and there are some tables and chairs under the stage. At this time, many guests are drinking, and there are beautiful women in gorgeous clothes. Walk in between. The old bustard smiled and led them upstairs. Master Bai's location is on the second floor, room number 2, looking down from the window, facing the stage, the view is the best. There are quite a few private rooms on the second floor, but only the 4 are the widest, with windows on both sides, so you can look at the table in the lobby and the scenery on the street. Other private rooms have to see dance music on the corridor, or the angle is not very good. As soon as Zhou Man and the others entered, many guests in the lobby looked at them. It is not uncommon for female guests to appear in the Hualu. The people of Dajin are open-minded. Some ladies love to watch dance, music, and opera, or the love between some noble couples. Therefore, the Hualu picks up female guests. It's just that female guests who come to play with a big belly are rare. The old bustard led the group to the private room with a smile on his face, and showed them the list. Tonight, the Warren Nianjiao in our building will come to the stage, and we also invited the girl Feng Hua from the Jiaofang to come to the stage. Order it after their performance. Bai Shan asked, acting in a private room. It all depends on the preferences of the nobles. Bai Shan looked at Zhou Man. What do you think? Zhou Man, Ms. Feng Hua's dance is very good, let's order it out. Since the site is good here, we can stage it on the stage. Bai Shan clicked and said, you are cheering. Who's going to support? Zhao Liaolang led a group of people to push the door in, and glanced at the list they drew down. Oh, why do you only order the dance of Feng Hua girl? He hurriedly cupped his hands with Mingda and squeezed beside Bai Shan and said, I tell you, the best performance in Chunfeng Tower is actually the lotus-picking dance performed by the girls in the building, the fish playing with the lotus leaf, and the fish playing with the lotus. Yet 11, the fish plays with the south of the lotus leaf, the fish plays with the north of the lotus leaf, and finally the fish leaps from the flower, that is called beauty. He took out the folding fan that was inserted in his waist, opened it with a snap, and leaned against the old maid behind the fan and shook his head. It's a pity, my sister is stingy, she only plays like this 1 or 2 times a year, if you're unlucky enough to catch up, then there's no such thing. Good luck. Zhou Man was in high spirits, so beautiful. Of course, I can deceive you in other ways, can I deceive you in this kind of thing? Zhao Liaolang said, if you don't believe me, ask my wife, she has seen it. Is it better than the dance music in the palace? Everyone looked at Mrs. Zhaolu together. Mrs. Zhaolu nodded and said, yes, don't have any fun. Marun and Lu Yu who came along nodded together and said, it's really beautiful. Bai Shan looked at the prostitute and asked with a smile, I wonder if this show is available in the building today. The old bustard looked puzzled. The noble person has asked us to refuse, but this dance is extremely difficult. The girls dance like this twice a year, both during the annual Huacheo festival and Mid-Autumn festival. This time is wrong. When this? Bai Shanyi met and asked with a smile, if I order this order, how much will it cost? The old lady did not speak. Zhao Liaolang coughed lightly, leaned into his ear and said, Hualu is not like this, just throw money at it. What price are you talking about? And it's not buying goods outside. Bai Shan yielded a little to the side and turned his head to look at him. Zhao Liaolang winked at him, it's agreed that you and Bai Er will treat you today. With a helpless expression on his face, Bai Shan took off the purse from his waist, took out the largest piece of silver from it and placed it on the table. The prostitute just laughed. Zhao Liaolang slammed aside, this is definitely not enough. Bai Shan. He thought about it and poured out all the money. Seeing that the old man was indifferent, he spread his hands to Zhao Liaolang and said, this is something I didn't expect. After all, Miss Feng Hua's dance is only 10,000 yuan. Zhou Man looked around and saw that Bai Erlang and Mingda were both touching their wallets, so she reached out to stop them. She took out a piece of gold in her sleeve, and finally took out a piece of gold and handed it to the madam while everyone was stunned. Enough is enough. Yet. The old bustard smiled instantly, and immediately held both hands, and held Zhou Man's hand in front of his chest. Enough, enough, Lord Zhou, wait a moment, I will make arrangements for you, I will let you see the best tonight. A good lotus-picking dance. He smiled again, tonight's fruit plate is ours, and the nobles can eat whatever they want. After saying that, holding the gold and twisting his waist, he stepped back. Zhao Liaolang looked at Zhou Man and said, as expected of Lord Zhou, The atmosphere. Mingda was also shocked. Why do you carry such a large ingot of gold with you? Zhou Man calmly tidied up his sleeves, and said with a deep face, don't you all say that Hualu is a gold eliminating cave? Naturally, you have to bring gold. You can't carry a sack of copper coins to visit Hualu, right? Zhao Liaolang couldn't help clapping his hands. Yes. Mrs. Zhao Liu's eye knife flew over. Zhao Liaolang immediately restrained his expression, and said with a serious face, it can't be said that, as a Dajin official, you still have to be diligent and thrifty, he. Bai Shan shook his head and smiled, looked at Ma Run and Lu Yu who were still standing, and stood up to salute. Brother Ma and Brother Lu have not been seen for a long time. Are these two Mrs-in-law? The classmates of Chongguan Hall, except for Yin Or, are all married. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang are still quite late, but apart from Zhao Liaolang and Feng Zonping who have played well, we have met the other wives. They haven't seen it? Lu Yu and Ma Run replied yes and introduced their wives to everyone. After everyone saw it, they found a seat and sat down. The room was spacious, with 2 tables, a screen at the back, and 2 large windows at the front and back. Especially the window facing the lobby, almost half of the wall is opened, and the line of sight is excellent. Bai Shan spoke with Lu Yu and others, while Zhou Man and Mingda sat down at another table with Mrs. Zhao Lu. Zhao Liaolang sat between Bai Shan and Bai Erlang, and leaned on their shoulders. I've been bored to death since you weren't in the capital for a few years. Bai Shan persistently took his hand away. I didn't see it. Zhao Liaolang jumped on it again. That's when you just came back, and you haven't fully realized it yet. You ask Bai Erlang, the year he returned to Beijing, whether I'm very honest. I don't even look like me. It's not boring or something. Bai Shan, I thought it was brother Zhao who was sensible and knew to take care of himself. Zhao Liaolang laughed loudly. You are very Lord Zhou, don't be like her. It's enough to have an imperial physician at home, and you even learn from her. Lu Yu was slightly displeased and raised his glass. Naturally, we can't compare to Lord Bai's holy favor. If we can pursue an official career with a vast sky and sea, naturally we can only enjoy ourselves in the brothel Chu Pavilion. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3308. Ma Run slightly pulled his sleeve. Lu Yu pulled it back, raised his head and drank a glass of wine. Zhao Liaolang glared at Lu Yu secretly, pulled Bai Shan and said, don't pay attention to him, he's in a bad mood, he'll be fine after a while. Bai Shan smiled at him, not taking it to heart. He didn't know Lu Yu well, how could he take him to heart? He came here tonight for a long time. What is the Warren in this building good at? What show is she performing tonight? Pipa, Zhao Liaolang quietly glanced at the next table, leaned into his ear and said, it's mainly because of her beauty, the kind of beauty that can be alluring with a smile. Bai Shan doubted, really? Can I lie to you? You'll know after a while, Zhao Liaolang said in a low voice, that's the beauty of a real woman, it's very charming, but it's a pity that you didn't come before, otherwise you'll be able to see it in advance. Now well. He glanced at Zhou Man vaguely, and said in a low voice, I don't dare to forgive you. Bai Erlang came over and asked in a low voice, it's so beautiful? Then you. He looked him up and down. Zhao Liaolang immediately said, don't think too much, I have the heart and the courage, but I don't have the money. Cut. Bai Erlang sat up straight and turned his head. Bai Shan asked curiously, how is it compared to Miss Fenghua? Different beauty, Zhao Liaolang said, one is as cold as a banished immortal, the other is as charming as a fox demon, spring flowers and autumn moon, how to compare? You are generous tonight. After their performances, the old lady may lead them up to see you, and then you can get up close and watch. Zhao Liaolang shook his fan and said, with your appearance, maybe you can still be white. I have to read a flower for Jiao. Bai Shan's forehead twitched slightly and asked, what does the flower represent? Zhao Liaolang curled his lips with a dull expression. Why are you asking me now, and then ask when you receive it? Bai Shan, come on. Zhao Liaolang whispered in Bai Shan's ear. Lu Yu saw it, took a sip of wine, got up and said, I'll go out for a walk. Marun got up quickly, I'll go out with him. Zhao Liaolang smiled and waved his hands at them, and talked with Bai Shan and Bai Erlang for a while, and then he made an excuse to go out. Lu Yu and Marun didn't go far, they just lay on the corridor and watched the actors performing on the stage below. Zhao Liaolang stepped forward and patted them, smiling slightly. Brother Lu, what are you doing? Didn't you say you wanted to get together with Bai Shan? I brought you here, so you just make fun of me. Lu Yu sneered, do you think he looks like he wants to ignore me? Now that he is so successful, how can he still see us as classmates from the past? Liaolang, didn't you see him ignoring you? What are you doing? You are only a first-class family member, can you still compare with your Zhao Qiagong's mansion? Brother Lu, Marun grabbed him, turned his head and said to Zhao Liaolang, whose face was heavy, Brother Zhao Lu, he didn't mean that. Zhao Liaolang had a sullen face. After being silent for a while, he suddenly sneered, and said coldly, he doesn't like to pay attention to you, and it's not just starting now. When he first entered the Chongquen Museum, didn't he ignore you? Lu Yu stared at Zhao Liaolang with wide eyes. Zhao Liaolang, when he was in the Chongquen Pavilion, he didn't pay much attention to me. If it wasn't for His Royal Highness, no, if it wasn't for Bai Erlang in the middle, I wouldn't talk to him. If you say he's arrogant, I recognize him. Proud, but if you say that he looked down on our former classmates once he was rich and noble, I don't recognize him. You ask Marun, is he Bai Shan such a person? Marun hurriedly shook his head, grabbed Lu Yu and said in a low voice, our relationship with Bai Shan is normal. When we were in school, Feng Zonping and the others who played better with them were the only ones in our group. Brother Six can play with them. Lu Yu blurted out, it's not because the sixth brother belongs to the Duke of Zhao's mansion, and the dog's eyes are low. He stopped talking, but Zhao Liaolang's face was already ashen. It's just that he is not Zhao Liaolang who was angry a few years ago, so he endured the breath in his chest and asked in a deep voice, then how are you doing? Are you still drinking this wine? Seeing that the two of them were not looking very well, Marun hurriedly said, drink, drink, why don't you drink? The ladies are still inside, Brother Six, you go first, Brother Lu, he just drank too much, let him blow it again. Let the wind blow, we'll be in a moment. Zhao Liaolang turned around and left. When Zhao Liaolang entered the private room, Marun frowned and said, what are you doing? Didn't you want to ask Bai Shan to do things? Why did you make trouble on the spot? I just can't stand his arrogance. Marun, it wasn't the first day he was like this. Wasn't he like this when he first entered the palace to study with him? After so many years, he still hasn't gotten used to it. Marun looked at him and sighed, forget it, it's hard to talk tonight, even with Brother Zhao. Lu Yu said nothing with a sullen face. Zhao Liaolang entered the private room and saw that they were just eating and chatting, and said, you guys are bored or not, you've already arrived at the Hualu, why are you still chatting? He shouted outside, come on, call some girls who can play the piano and sing. He rushed to Zhou Manel, Master Zhou will not be reluctant to pay the bill, right? Zhou Mandao, come on, just order, we're here to learn more. Mrs. Zhao Lu said to him, then listen to him right. She looked at Zhao Liaolang with a half smile, and said, he may not be familiar with other places. There is no Hualu on this street that he is unfamiliar with, especially this Chunfenglu, which is the most familiar. Mingda asked with a smile, why did the cousin-in-law also let the sixth cousin come? He thought to himself, I can't tie him with a rope, Mrs. Zhao Lu said. Fortunately, the money given by the public has a certain amount. He can come and play if he wants to. He can make money himself. I didn't give it to him. Zhao Liaolang winked at Bai Erlang. Speaking of this, I would like to thank Bai I woo woo. Bai Erlang covered his mouth and said to Mingda, who looked over curiously, I never come to Hualu, it has nothing to do with me. Zhao Liaolang tore off his hand, I didn't say it had anything to do with you, what are you anxious about? Everyone was fighting for a while, and a guy brought 3 girls over, holding the chin and pipa, and came to play the chin and sing for them. When the lanterns first came on, the sky was completely dark outside, and there was a sound of music from below, and a beautiful woman walked up to the stage and said, my distinguished guests, today is the 5th day, and it's a big day for my performance in Chunfenglu. Today I'm honored to invite girl Fenghua from Dejiaofang is here to dance. When Zhou Man and the others heard the sound, they immediately turned their heads to look out the window. The voice was clear, the sight line was clear, and they could have a panoramic view of the scene downstairs. Mingda couldn't help but praise, this location is really good. Zhao Liaolang took a sip of wine and said, that's natural, I recommend it to Zishan. Bai Shan cupped his hands to him. Zhao Liaolang returned the salute, you're welcome, you're welcome.